This is Vahid from the RF Education channel, and welcome to another session of Qt Programming. In this session, we are going to learn about lambda expression and how to make use of this feature in our Qt codes. Lambda expressions are anonymous functions defined directly inside the body of another function. We have the same feature in other programming languages such as Python or JavaScript. But in C++, using standard functions or legacy functions, we cannot declare inner functions. To make this, we need to use lambda expressions, and it's added to C++ in C++11. The syntax for lambda expression is something like this. First, we can define some captured variables, and I'm going to talk about it very soon. Then we have arguments. It's the same as the standard function, and then we have the lambda code inside curly braces. Well, in my opinion, we should make use of lambda expressions for a small functions that we need to declare them directly inside another method. For larger scale methods, I think it's better to declare them using standard or legacy functions and call them directly using their names. And also, this type of functions, I mean lambda expression, have some useful usages inside Qt programming, and I'm going to talk about it in the next part of this video. Well, let's go to Qt Creator and see the functionalities of this feature in practice and talk about different parts of this syntax in that environment, especially for captured variables. It's a very cool feature that I think other programming languages not supported. And then I'm going to use this feature alongside with Qt codes. Okay, here I created a project named Lambda Demo. It's a Qt widget application project, and I'm going to add the codes to see how lambda expression going to work in this project. First of all, I'm going to create a lambda expression to use inside std transform function. The purpose of this function is to iterate over a vector or an iterable object and apply the function or the lambda expression on each element of this array or vector. For this purpose, let's go to main window. I'm going to add a button on form. The name is lambda demo 1, and I'm going to change the name also to btn lambda demo 1. So let's create slots for this button. Here I'm going to say let's add also a couple of header files. I'm going to use algorithm and also IO string and that's, and inside this button I'm going to create a queue list of integer values. The name is list, and I'm going to add a couple of items, for example 1, 2, 3 to this list. Now I'm going to call std transform function. Here we need to specify the begin and the end of the iterable object. So I'm going to use list.begin, and then the last item is list.end, list.end, and the next item, where should I put the result? So I'm going to overwrite it on original list. So again, I'm going to provide the begin as this parameter, and the last function we need to pass a function. So let's first create a function. Here I'm going to create a function, external function. The name is, for example, void doubler, and it's gonna receive a value and then return value multiplied by 2. So that's return, not void, it's int. Okay, here I'm gonna say, okay, run this function doubler over each item inside this list, and after that I'm gonna print it, print the result to the output list. Let's see what we have. So let's run the application, and that's it. Let's minimize it a little and press lambda 2. As you can see, the list changed and the item is 2, 4, 6 as we expected. This is very simple and it's ordinary. Now I want to provide a lambda expression here, or an anonymous function. For this purpose we need to put open and close parentheses. We don't need to be worried about captured variables right now. We just omit it, but we need to add these open and close bracket here, and then I'm gonna provide the parameter list. This time we have an integer as the input parameter, and as the body of lambda expression we need to do something. For example, return value, this time multiplied by 3, and after that I'm gonna say, okay, run print out the list. Let's run the application, and if I press this button, you can see here we have 3, 6, 9 this time as our output. So this is the way that we can pass a lambda expression as a parameter into the other functions. Open and close bracket, the parameter list, and then the real function code, or the body of a lambda expression. Here we can have as many as a line of code that we need, but for code clearance we need to provide, for example, 1 or 2 line of code in lambda expression. If we have more than this line of code, it's better to declare it as a function in our class or our cplusplus files. Now let's talk about capturing variables part, this part. What do we want to do? For example, imagine that I want to multiply each element by 3, and before that I want to sum all the original values into a variable named sum. Okay, so I'm going to create a variable named sum here. By default it's equal to 0, and after that I'm gonna print it. Okay, so I'm gonna see if the change applied on the list, and also print the summation of values inside that list. In order to get access to the variables inside this scope, we need to specify it inside the capturing variables. As the name implies, a lambda expression can make use of variables in the current scope by capturing them. So here I'm gonna say we have a variable, and I put ampersand before it, so I'm gonna access to this variable by reference, not by value. So any change applied to this variable inside the body of lambda expression apply directly to this variable in memory. Let's see, what should we do? So I'm gonna say, before returning the values, I'm gonna say sum plus equal to value, and then I'm gonna return the value. So we do 2 things here. First we add the current value to a sum variable and then multiply it by 3. It's somehow not good way to add 2 different type of works in the same body, but we want to see how this capturing values or capturing variable works. Now let's run the application one more time. So if I press lambda demo, here you can see we have 3, 6, 9, and the summation of 1 through 3 equals to 6. So this way we can access to the variable inside this scope, and by putting ampersand behind the variables we can access it by reference. Now imagine that I want to capture two values. For example, I have a flag here. The name is bool sum active equals to false. So inside the function, the lambda expression, I want to check if the sum active is equal to true, then add the current value to the sum variable. So it's very easy, and you can add as many as parameter or as many as variables that you want to capture, separate by a comma inside the capture variables part. This time we don't need to have access to sum active by reference, so I'm gonna just access it using by value method, and this time let's copy this one. Yeah, and I'm gonna add if expression here. If sum active, then add the current value to some variable. That's it. So let's run the application. This time we should print 0 as the output of some variables, and if I change it to true, so again the summation operation will be done. Let's see the output. Yeah, that's correct, and the summation this time occurred, and we have 6 in some variables. So that's it. And let's see what. Imagine that I want to capture a lot of variables inside this scope, so I don't need to add all of the variables name inside this open and close bracket. We can use this notation, something like this, just an ampersand inside the capturing values. It says, okay, I want to access to the all variables inside this scope using by reference method. So if I run the application this time, again we have the same result, 6 stored inside the sum, and also we access to this sum active. What if I change it to false? So this time we don't need to do summation. If I press lambda demo, you can see the summation this time equal to 0. What if I don't want to access the items by reference? So we can just add this notation. This is somehow equal to calling by value, and this time we have an error here. It says that you cannot assign a variable captured by a copy in non-mutable lambda. So we cannot change the value of sum this time. We can only read the values. Imagine that I want to do something like this. For example, okay, int, no, not, yeah, is double active sum equal to true, and here I'm going to say if is double active, return value multiplied by 2, otherwise return value multiplied by 3. And because we declared the capturing variable part like this, we can access to this is double active by value, and we don't need to change the value, we just read the value. Now if I run the application and press the button, this time we calculate the double or we multiply each values by double, and if I change it to false, this part of code will be run, and we have each values multiplied by 3 in the output. Okay, that's correct. So this is a lazy way that we can capture values inside Lambda expressions. Well, This approach is not recommended, but you can make use of it. You can access to the all variables inside this scope. Now let's change the scenario. I want to move these variables, or I should change the type also to bool. I forgot to do it. To the class level. So this is a field inside my class. Now, instead of capturing all the items, for example, imagine that I want to access to some variable. So it says, okay, I don't have any variable named is active. In this scenario that you want to access to the field inside an instance of a class, you need to pass this here. I want to capture current instance of fields. So here you can say, again, the code gonna work because we captured the is active. Now if I run the application, we don't have any problem. I hope. Yeah, if I press OK, everything works. Now let's do another thing. So I'm gonna make use of this lambda expression in Qt connections in a way like this. Now imagine another scenario. I want to create a push button on a form, and when the push button click, I want to start a phone call. Let's do it in a legacy approach and then change it to lambda expression. Here I'm gonna create a method, create a button, or add a button on a form, and change the name to make call, and then also the name is btn make call. Let's add clicked. No, I just want to define the clicked signal inside the constructor. Sometimes we do this, but especially when we create the widgets dynamically at runtime. So I'm going to connect what ui.btn. Let's build the project in order to create creator. Realize that I add a new widget on the form. ui.btn make call, btn make call, and what's the signal? It's inside the Qt push button, Qt push button, clicked function, clicked signal, and then I'm going to connect it to our main window class, or this instance, and the slot is main window, and I'm going to create a slot. The name is make call. So it's a private slot, so I'm going to create make call slot, and inside this I'm going to say qdebug a call made, something like this. Or you can also have some service here, for example phone service call a number, something like this. But this time we just have to mimic this operation by printing something in the output. So what if I run the application? The output is very obvious. A message will be appear inside the output. Now I want to change this type of slot, simple slot with just one line of code, to lambda expression. For this purpose, and also let's do another thing. I'm gonna add what, a line edit on the form and change it to ln number. So I'm gonna print to I think I need to build the application. Okay, ui.ln number.text. So I want to print out the number that entered inside this line edit. For example, 1 through 3 make call, a call made to 1 through 3. That's okay. And what if I want to change it to our new approach? So let's duplicate this line of code. And this time, instead of providing this as a receiver of that signal and also define a slot function, you can delete these two parameters and capture this as the value. Capture these, and then we are going to create a lambda with an empty argument list, because collect has no parameter with itself. And this time I'm gonna copy this line of code here, so that's gonna work. And also we can access to the UI member because we captured this variable. So that's it. Let's run the application. And if I enter something like this, a call made to 1, 2, 3, 4 will be shown inside the output. So for a small type of slot, we can declare the slot something like this using lambda expression in the connect module. This is somehow named the new style connections in Qt environment, and it's very recommended for these type of scenarios. A small slot function that we need to do or make a very simple call to another service. You can use lambda expression to handle this situation. Another usage of lambda expression is when we attach something to our object or our widget, and then inside the slot we need to call the sender method and extract the value from the widget, and then but before that we need to cast it to the target object, the target class, and then extract the value and make use of that values. Using lambda expression we can handle this situation very cleaner and also much better. Let's see what do I really mean by this. Imagine that I have 3 buttons on a form. 3 buttons. Push button 1, push button 2, and push button 3. These 3 buttons. btn 1, btn 2, and btn 3. Also, let's change the name also to btn 1, btn 2, btn 2, and btn 3. And I should mention that this type of works are useful when you want to do some UI things dynamically at runtime. You need to create buttons inside your code and attach something to those buttons. And I'm gonna mimic this operation here. I'm gonna create a list of qpush buttons, btn list, and I'm gonna add those buttons on the list on the form to this list: UI btn 1, UI.btn 2, and UI.btn 3. Now imagine that I create these buttons inside the code at runtime. Now I want to create a slot that when each button clicked, a number that is placed inside the property of this button should be extracted in that slot, and for example make a call with that button. For example, here I'm going to change it to police. This one is fire station, and this one is hospital. So here I'm going to say 4. Bytes 0 to 3. Let's do what? I'm going to say btn list index at index I want to set a property for you, and the property is phone, and the value is I. So we can change it with a useful or a meaningful phone, but this time I just need to add a 0, 1, 2, 1, 2 to these 3 buttons, and then I'm gonna connect this item inside the btn list and the clicked signal to a slot inside my class. main window, and make call 2. I'm going to create another slot here. Okay, this is make call 2, and inside make call 2 I'm gonna first grab the sender q push button. We have a btn here, and I'm going to use a static cast. The type is q push button, a reference or a pointer to that, and the value is inside the sender function. And after that I'm going to say, okay, I have a phone number, it's saved inside the btn, and I'm going to use property method to extract it, and I'm going to cast it to int. And at last, let's grab these 2 lines of code. We can use a phone service class to call to this phone, but this time we want to print a message, a call made to phone. So the output is somehow obvious. If I press on this button, police, a call made to 0, a call made to 1, and a call made to hospital. Now let's change these to anonymous or lambda expression version. Again, we have a list. I'm gonna, oops, what happened? I'm gonna comment this line of code, and this time let's copy this code. Again, we have a for loop, and also let's copy this one. I need to connect the click signal of this button to something like this. I need to capture this and I as the input, or capturing variables, and for parameter we don't have any parameter, and inside the body we don't need to extract anything from the button property system. We can just make call to that phone, and that phone is I here. Okay, and because we don't have any phone service inside this class, this is gonna be a warning here. We capture this, but we don't make use of this variable. So if I run the application, the output is the same, the call made to 0, 1, 2. This time we just pass the variable needed to have inside the function directly when we want to connect the function or connect the signal to the lambda expression. This is much cleaner than this way to extract something from the sender object and extract the values and then do the other type of things. So this is another usage of lambda expression instead of accessing to the sender inside the slots. Well, this session got a little bit long, and I think it's better to move the other topics. We have 2 more topics for lambda expression in Qt ecosystem. The first one is receiver life cycle in connect method, and the other one is using lambda expression instead of invoke method in qmet object. These are somehow advanced topics, and if you want to code in advanced way, you need to know about them. And I'm gonna talk about them in the next session. Till next session, goodbye.